Today we're going to make banana bread. When our bananas get a little bit overripe and they're at a certain texture that I just don't like. I like my bananas so that they're, just kind of yellow, but not, under yellowed when they're green, and then when they start getting all kind of browns and spots, on them, I don't like them. So I will typically put them in the freezer, and when they multiply by a few containers, then I'll start making banana bread. So today we're going to make banana bread, and I have enough bananas that we're going to make it yields 4 large pans of banana bread, or 3 small pans and 3 large pans. So for one recipe, you would have 1 cup of sugar and 2 eggs. But for 4 pans, we are going to start with 4 cups of sugar and 8 eggs, and I'm going to use my big Hobart mixer to mix them. Otherwise, you can just use your small KitchenAid mixer, or a regular mixer if that's what you have. So I'm going to put this on a lower speed to start, and then to get it mixed up really well, then I'm going to put it on the 2nd speed. But I like to get it started so that it doesn't, so that the liquid doesn't splash all over in the beginning. So it's going to be a little bit faster now. And after the eggs and sugar are mixed, then I'm going to add milk. So I need a cup of milk, which my assistant and husband, Gary, is going to get right now. And while I'm waiting for the milk, I'm just going to follow up on our last episode, which was making bruschetta from our trip to Italy. And I talked about the wonderful gelato that we would have while we were there. And I wasn't completely sure what the difference was between gelato and our American ice cream. So after a little bit of research, I discovered that the main difference, well, there's actually 3 differences. It's the amount of fat, the air, and the temperature. It makes a difference between the Italian gelato, which is actually called ice cream. Gelato means ice cream. Gelato has more milk in it, whereas our regular American ice cream will have more cream or fat. And gelato also has fewer to no egg yolks, which also makes like the custard-based ice cream very creamy and very fat. When ice cream is being made, they churn it at a very fast speed, which also causes lots of air to be whipped into it. Whereas with gelato, they churn it at a slower speed, which makes it, it gives it a more dense flavor when you're eating it. So that the denseness actually makes it almost more like a swirl of frosting rather than our ice cream. And the third thing that makes it different is the temperature. Gelato is kept in a freezer at 10 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas our ice cream is kept in a freezer at -5 to -0. And because of the air and the cream that's churned into our ice cream, if they kept it at the higher temperature of 10 degrees Fahrenheit, it would make our ice cream soupy, which would not be good. When you would have your ice cream cone, you'd end up having soup, and it would be very soft, whereas the gelato is smooth and just gives it a very nice flavor. So hopefully that answers your question if you hadn't done any research of the difference between gelato and ice cream on your own. Okay, so back to our milk. So when we're making, let me check my book here. This is my mother's recipe book, actually. It's from Ethel's Kitchen, and it was all of her recipes were combined, a compilation of her recipes by my sister Carol, who has a printing business. So with 1 loaf of banana bread, we are going to put in 3 tablespoons of milk. And with 4 loaves, that would be 12 tablespoons of milk, or 3/4 of a cup. And it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. So we're going to put in 2 teaspoons of vanilla, which is going to be, it's about 1 teaspoon, and that's about 2, okay? And then we're going to mix that again. And again, I'm going to turn it on to a little bit of a lower speed because this will really splash with the milk. Okay, and now I'm ready for a little bit higher speed. So after we get this all mixed up nicely, then we are going to add on 1 loaf of banana bread, you would add 2 cups of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of salt, but I typically just put in, maybe half of the half or 1/4. So I am going to put in 8 cups of flour and 2 teaspoons of baking soda and baking powder, and about 1 teaspoon of salt. Whenever I make banana bread, I like to make it in a large quantity because it's, kind of a lot of extra work when you're making it. So I typically would never make just 1 loaf. Okay, and then we're going to again put that on a lower speed so the flour doesn't splash or doesn't come out and get all over your counter, which it has done if you have it going too fast. And banana bread is really quite easy to make. It's just having all of your ingredients ready to go. And I'm going to put this on a little bit higher speed again. That's going to get it all nicely mixed up now. And then the last thing is I've already gotten my bananas all set. When they're in the freezer, what I do is just take them out of the banana peel, and I'll just put it in a container and maybe just put 1 in if that's what it has gotten to a point where I don't like to eat it. And then I'll add extra bananas as they also get to be overripe. And then after, like I said, so I have so many bananas, then I'll just put them in a container and then just put the containers, the frozen containers, in the refrigerator. And you can take them out and put that in the refrigerator overnight if you like. So then it's soft and ready to go the next day. Or I can get it out in the morning and just let them, thaw on your counter too. So for 1 recipe, you're going to put in 1 cup of bananas, or 4 cups if you're making 4 loaves of bread. And then what makes this recipe really special is you put in 1 stick of butter for every loaf. So we have a whole pound of butter, or 4 sticks of butter. And then we add 1/2 cup of walnuts, and they can be, pre-chopped, or I'll, chop them by hand. Again, I am going to put this on low because the butter is going to come out and get all over. I used to always mix my banana breads by hand in a big bowl, so when I was doing 4 or 5 loaves of banana bread, it got to be really heavy as I was getting to the end of it. So when I'm making a large quantity like this, my Hobart mixer really comes in handy. So I really like this machine. And I really have Gary here because this bowl gets really heavy, so I'm going to let him do the pouring.
Okay.
And when I make banana bread, what I will typically do, if I'm just making the big loaves, we don't want it, to dry out, so I usually cut them in half, and then I'll wrap it in, a clear plastic wrap, and then in, either in foil, or you can just put it in like your Tupperware or some kind of a pan that, some kind of container. Okay, you ready? Okay. Oh, and what we have here are, I grease the, are these greased on top too? Okay. I grease my tins, and I found that, I don't know if it's my loaf pans have just gotten old, but sometimes the banana bread will, or the banana, bread will stick when you get it out of the oven. So what I have found works really well is I grease the pan, and then we use parchment paper. And I just put the parchment paper in up the sides like this, so it's not covering the ends, but it's just up the sides, and then that way it comes off really nicely when you get it out of the oven. Sometimes it would be really frustrating when I was making banana bread and I was going to make it for an event, or to give it to somebody for a gift, or to take it, or just to have it at home. And then you have trouble with your bread coming out of the oven and half of the bottom is missing, and it's kind of hard to put it back together. So these come out really well. And in my business, you can check my menus online at sliceofheavenwi.com. And people will ask for little loaves of banana bread, different types of breads, mini breads that I make. And I make them in these little pans, and then if they want them for gifts, then we put cello paper, a wrap on them, and then I do a little curly ribbon, and they make nice little, just a little thank you gift, or a little gift that you can give for, just a little Christmas gift, or the little loaves are nice for the holidays, especially if you need to take something, to like an open house, if you're invited for a breakfast, or just want to take a little thank you gift for somebody that's hosting. What I really like, because everybody is trying to be really conservative and frugal and fiscally minded with not wasting food and really being careful. So what I like is, if you have something like bananas that you're just going to throw out, it's really nice to be able to use them in baking. I make banana bars or a banana cake in addition to the banana breads, and it's nice to be able to use your food up rather than having to discard it. So the large loaves are going to bake at 350 degrees. We have our oven preheated, and the recipe calls for them to bake for about an hour, and you can set your timer for an hour, but then typically you will probably want to go back and give it some more time. So they might take more like an hour and 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the doneness. And Gary, if you want to get me my little cake tester. And when I was growing up, my mother used to just use a toothpick that you would stick inside your loaf of bread to test. But I actually have it's a little metal cake tester. And you just plop that in, especially the middle. That's where you're going to test it. And if it comes out clean without any bread or anything on it, then you know that your cake is done. If some of the dough is still a little bit soft, it's going to come out on your cake tester. So that's when you determine that you might want to put it in again for another couple of minutes. As I said, you want to bake your larger loaves for about an hour or so, and then your little loaves you're going to bake for about a half hour. But again, just keep checking them to make sure that you don't let them get overdone. So this are a couple of the loaves that I made yesterday, and I like to take a serrated bread knife when I'm cutting them, and that cuts much easier. And typically when I cut my bread, I'll cut them into about 3/8 to a ½ inch slice. And then you can just have a little plate, and you can serve your bread. Sometimes if I'm having a a big, buffet, a breakfast buffet. I'll even cut them in half so that people like to try different things, so a half a slice might be all that they want. And someone in my family, his name I won't mention, also likes to put butter on his bread, but I typically think if you already have a whole stick of butter in one loaf of bread, that's probably enough. But
to quote a famous chef, you can never have too much butter.
And what's really good too is putting a slice of your banana bread in the microwave and heating it up, and then a little butter on top, and it just makes a really nice little snack during the day, or for your brunch or breakfast, or whenever you feel like having it. So I hope you've enjoyed this segment of A Slice of Heaven and learned a little bit about what I do with bananas that I don't enjoy eating, and also filled you in on the gelato. So until next time, happy cooking.